Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again. It is Saturday at 10:04. Hope everyone's doing good. It continues to be amazing weather. It's still super nice and it's starting to get more and more blue outside. So it's yeah, this fall has been just spectacular. Really unusually warm, but just beautiful days. So really nice. I am fortunate to be be outside a lot. Usually for work, where I work with kids at the Montessori school. So we spend most of the day, at least when I'm there, and I'm there part time. We spend outside. We're outside the whole day, so it's really nice. And again, going back to the summer, my summer season is pretty different than it is now. Usually summer is kind of super insanely busy with work and gigs and things. And now it's like I have a lot of things that I do and keep myself busy. But it's a radical different. The schedule is radically different. So and during the summer, gigs are about 90% of shows are outside. So, and again, it's my favorite season anyway, so it's really nice. So it's really cool to see to have that kind of continuation as far as season wise to be still be able to be outside for the most part. It's not going to last forever till it will get a little too cold, but pretty darn nice. But anyway, fall is I do love the fall. I'm a summertime person, but and of course Halloween season, and of course Halloween itself is my favorite holiday. I've always been a big fan of holidays as a kid. Halloween's always been my favorite, and then I'd say probably Christmas is my second favorite. I also love Thanksgiving, so it's New Year's Eve. I think is fun, can be fun, but I think it's wicked. I always feel like New Year's Eve is always kind of anticlimactic, or there's this thing of where it's overly hyped. I don't know. It always feels like there's this build up to where it's going to be this big party or this big kind of event, and it's going to be really memorable. And then it's always like, okay, it's over. Same shit, different day. New Year's Day always feels that way too. It's always to me, it's like, obviously it's the significance. It marks the passing of time and a new year. But I also, and again, lots of things have change all the time. Things are always moving. And there's always, but as far as real change and real things that happen to you that are significantly new, not really. I think things kind of stay the same, for the most part. There are new things that you explore, and there's those new books that you'll read. There's those new ideas that you might learn, or in this case, new films that you'll see. Maybe you'll do some traveling, and you'll do a few new adventures. But it's I don't know. I think it's a little bit overly hyped. I think it's the same shit, different day. Um, but I think there's more enjoyment in the other holidays. But anyway, so Halloween's approaching. People have been talking about doing all of these kinds of Halloween, the scariest movie. There's lists for the best movies to watch around Halloween season and all those things. And I've said before, I'm not really. Um, for me, it's like I watch horror movies all the time, pretty much nightly, and it's not. I my habits don't really change around Halloween. I mean, and it's funny, like literally they don't. Like if I have quantum gigs, for instance, I wear masks and I kind of have a try to have a theatrical element to that has aspects of what kids do on Halloween or adults. And then my movie habits are pretty much the same. I pretty much watch horror movies all year round. My house is always kind of decorated and with a darker, spooky aesthetic. So that's not anything different. You know, I don't usually decorate anything more. I might have. I'm having some friends like a little mini party on Halloween, which I'm kind of excited. On actual Halloween, which is coming up on Thursday already, and I might get some extra decorations or something. But other than that, my house is just here. It's funny. I was going to do it. I tried doing it last year. I think it was last year. I tried doing it twice, and I had this idea for Film Fanatic for this channel to do like a watch party. Where basically have a little party with a group of friends and get some food and some beers and pick one or two horror movies that to watch and I was going to record it for Film Fanatic and put it out there on the World Wide Web because that's a thing that I've seen a few YouTube guys and girls that I like they do that and I've seen it with music. A few guys that I like who do these music shows, music channels, and they basically it's them just kind of candidly hanging out with their friends and shooting the shit. It's off the cuff, and it's just recorded of them just kind of hanging out. And I was like, that's cool. Like that's a cool idea, and I've seen a few videos like that, and sometimes it's really funny, and you know, but I kind of also feel like, it's just kind of I don't know what's the point. It just seems a little bit useless. I know it's another attraction to the channel or some kind of new thing to get people pulled in. So I tried the first time I did my series of Friday 13th, which I'm again doing another whole slew of videos on, and I'm almost done. Still got some more to go. I originally was going to do a watch party last year for Freddy vs. Jason, and I was going to have a Film Fanatic event and host the party here at my house and basically go live, record the show, and all those things. And then I had to cancel it. I couldn't do it for a couple of reasons. And then I was going to try it again, and something else came up. And so then I thought about doing it again this year, but then I was like, well, it's kind of late. It's kind of late. I haven't really planned anything. And then I was like, well, Halloween's my favorite holiday. I should do something fun. I could probably do something. Because the thing that I always feel like Halloween itself was always, there's always kind of this weird dilemma around it, at least for adults. Because, for Halloween, for kids, it's, it's an extraordinary. It's an extraordinary experience. You go trick-or-treating, you eat all this candy, and you hang out with your friends and all those things. But for adults, usually Halloween events are always like the weekend before, or, there's not really, like there's been events happening. There were events last week. I played at this Halloween event last week. And there's been, there's always events like the weekend before or days before Halloween. Because Halloween always falls on like an odd day, like Thursday. So there's typically not on actual Halloween, and people have parties, before. There, when it comes to actual Halloween, it never seems to be a lot of things to do, which is always odd. So I was like, I'll have a little party, and then I was like, I'm gonna probably do a Film Fanatic show around it. And I was like, nah, fuck it. I don't see the interest in like people finding value or entertainment of me just kind of hanging out with my friends, eating pizza and drinking beer and watching some cool horror movies. I don't know. We'll see. But it doesn't sound like a very appealing idea to me now. I don't know. It's just funny. But anyway. So this brings me to the whole point of today's show. And I mentioned this was something I was going to get to, and so I have been excited about talking about it again. So I'm going to do it today because again, this movie came out of nowhere, totally surprised me, and that is Lake Mungo. I did a show on this originally, and I've talked about the scenario of how I discovered this movie. It was a random thing that happened. I saw it online. I saw someone talking about it, and then I checked out this kind of review. It was really interesting. It spurred my interest. There was, and then I looked at other things around the movie where there was a really great review by the fantastic director Mike Flanagan, where he raved about Lake Mungo, saying it was like kind of a masterpiece and one of the best horror movies he's seen in a very, very long time. And I was like, okay, Mike Flanagan's kind of the shit, so if he says it's really good, chances are it's probably pretty good. So after sitting through that interview, I found Lake Mungo on online. I found it on Tubi and I watched it. Started watching it, but and it came out of a place of pretty bad insomnia. So I couldn't sleep. I had to get up early the next day, and I couldn't fall asleep. And I started watching it like at 1 or 1:30 in the morning, and I was totally into. I loved everything that I was watching, and it's a short movie. It's only an hour and a half. And then I started watching it. Probably got about 45 minutes, and I realized, damn, I have to get up at like 6:30 or 7. It'd be good to get some kind of sleep, because then the next day will be total will be total trash. So reluctantly, and plus I was tired, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop the movie right here, and then the next day I'm gonna watch it. So the next day I watched it. The next night I watched it after like kind of getting sleep and stuff, and I really thought it was kind of fantastic. And then a day or two after that, I found it online, and I saw that when I watched it, and then read some things about it, that this movie kind of disappeared. It's you can't find any information about it, about the directors, blah blah blah. And then I found this version of it online on Amazon, and I don't typically order things online, but I was like, Opera House Video definitely is not going to have this movie. I go to the video shops all the time, never see this movie. I never hear people talk about it, so I was like, fuck it. So I ordered it, and I didn't realize, but there's tons, which I'm actually watching right now. I finished a really amazing interview with the cinematographer for this movie last night, and there's like hours of just incredible special features. And after I started watching the special features, I was like, yep, this is what does it for me. And not only, of course, you want to buy a movie that you love, and it's really a really good quality version of that film. But I'm a nerd, and I love special features. Like if I see a movie that really is, just I feel is just awesome. One of the things I'll do is like I want to find out like kind of what influenced that movie. What were like say for instance like what films inspired that director? Like what kind of movies is he into? Or that happened to me like after I saw The Substance, which is an amazing film, and I just did a show on. I've done a couple of shows on it. I looked up the director, found some interviews, and I was like, wow, I wonder what she's like, what she digs, what she's into. And I do that. I do that a lot. I do that a lot if I discover a band that I'm into. I'll like, check out the music, and then I'll like seek out interviews, because I love finding interesting kind of behind the scenes things on how, that creative process, and we're like the sum of all of our parts. Where people are inspired by so many different things, and sometimes it's more conscious than others, but it's a you can obviously hear influences or see influences, and sometimes it's under the surface. So, but I'm fascinated by that, and every artist, whether it's music or film or whatever it is, in this case it's film, has a different approach and has a different source of inspirations. And I'm always, what their inspirations are and how technically it was done. And so I love that. I love hearing that process. And watching the special features on this movie were just fascinating. You know, finding out all of these technical things because this movie came out in 2008. It's an Australian movie. And I think this movie is just extraordinary. I think this movie definitely is one of the creepiest movies and one of, like, literally one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. And the fascinating thing about this movie is that it does away with every conceivable horror trope that you can think of. You know, jump scares, copious amounts of gore and violence, and copious amounts of sex, and teenagers getting killed at a summer camp. You know, it takes all of those things and kind of throws it all out the window, and finds a way to tell a really riveting story and have elements of horror where it's so incredibly creepy, and there are moments of where it's, I think, really kind of terrifying. But do it in a way, find this way, creative way of doing it in this way of where it's literally a small cast of actors that are just incredible, really great. There's another segment uh, on this Blu-ray that I'm really looking forward to watching, which I'm gonna right now. I'm listening to an interview with the producer of this movie and watching, and it's so great. Just started it, but there's interviews, I believe, with the actors, which I'm really excited about checking out. But so again, they did away with all those tropes and stereotypes, which, again, I love those. They're overused, I think, now. But you essentially have a group of really really highly skilled actors, and you put them in a room with a really well written, well thought out, well executed script. And you throw them in a room with a camera and you just record them. Uh, they're filmed telling that story. That's it. That's literally what this movie is. And but visually, I will say this: the visual, and again, that's the thing that I love about Blu-rays and 4K. When you see it, when you get a really good edition of this of a movie, it's a whole new and different experience. And again, this edition on Blu-ray is extraordinary. I really struck gold when I first saw it. I watched it online, and the quality was pretty much dog shit. It was okay, but I was able to watch and definitely get into the movie regardless. But it's a whole different experience. And this came out in 2008, and it's just fascinating how the filmmakers wanted to really replicate this idea of a documentary, but using technology like that was available in 2008, where people were even using flip phones, and they had, phones had cameras on them back then, but the technology was not very good. And filming these things that way, old school camcorders, more higher end, professional cameras for film, for shooting film, and then using cell phones, flip phone cameras, because the film is comprised of these memories and video of things that have happened. As the story is being unfolded, you're getting these clips of video, and it's all kind of strewn together to where it's like this tapestry. And it's they talk about that process of where they wanted to make this movie as authentic as possible. And you know, movies that they were talking about that inspired this movie were movies like Capturing the Freedmans, which is a documentary which is one of the most jaw-dropping documentaries I've ever seen. I mean, it's just incredible. They were talking about that movie being a real big inspiration. American Movie, which is another phenomenal movie about this crazy group of guys that are making this movie, making a horror movie. And they were also saying, this Blair Witch Project, for instance, was is like started a when that came out, that movie started its own genre, the found footage genre. And this movie isn't really like it's got that influence from that movie, obviously, but it's not really found footage. Like there is a lot of so-called found footage in the movie, but it doesn't. It's not. That's not the only narrative. Whereas a movie like Blair Witch, that's how you're getting the information is from this alleged kind of footage. This movie is goes back and forth between the interview segments with the people, with the characters, and then they're referencing and they're talking about video that they had taken, and then they show that. So it's very interesting, and it kind of jumps back and forth, and it's put together in a way that is so seamless, really, and it's raw. I like that this movie is really raw. It is very low budget that way. And again, this movie is. And the other things they were talking about is it's shot in a very much a documentary feel. It doesn't have it's and they don't want to call it a mockumentary, because a mockumentary is more of where it's a satire. It's not a satire. Like say Spinal Tap. I feel like that's kind of a mockumentary. So it's a different thing. And then the aspects too of this film is that at its core, it's like a really well crafted kind of ghost story. But it is, I think, really, as you get into this movie, I think that's kind of a limited thing to say about this movie. Even though it's kind of true, I feel like this movie is much more than that. Like, it's not really, even in the special features of, like, Mungo, they were saying it is not really necessarily correct to call this movie or market this film as a horror film, which I thought was really interesting. But for me, it is. It's definitely a horror movie, but it has. There's a lot of character study. The actors in this film are just extraordinary. I've never seen any of these actors or actresses before. They're just phenomenal. The I think this movie is a melodrama. I think this movie is a mystery film, murder mystery film. Really, really good. They also talked about David Lynch being a huge influence on this movie, which I definitely see, which is really interesting. It has this film has a very quiet quality to it. Very atmospheric. It's definitely a slow burn. It's a slow film, but it oozes this whole feeling of like uneasiness, like something's wrong or something is off kilter. And there are moments in this film of where you get the sense that like something is really wrong and something's really off. And it's not done, you're not getting hit over the head with a hammer at all in any aspect of this movie. It's all subtle. And the story does all the work. They don't rely on having to, overcompensate with nailing a certain point home. I think they do a really great job. Like for instance, I watched an example for me of where they did that too much, and they kind of ruined the experience. Plus, it's too long, but the story itself is unbelievable. I recently watched a documentary about Kane Hodder, who famously he played Jason Voorhees in the Friday the 13th series, of course. And there's a documentary that I had heard about that was supposed to be really, really good. And it came out a few years ago about Kane Hodder's life. And I watched it, and it's about an hour and 48 minutes, hour and 49 minutes. And it's really good. I learned a lot about his life, and it is, there are moments in that story where it's kind of jaw dropping. So, like, you take that, and that's a purely it's a 100% work of nonfiction. It's a documentary, a portrayal of someone's life. But theatrically, they do this thing where they try to like overly dramatize the emotional aspect of the movie, and they put there are all of these sequences in the movie where they cut to him like walking in the park and being very contemplative, and it's black and white, and then they have this, well, cheesy music playing, and they just kind of do that throughout the movie, and they cut away to this, and they take and it's effective at first, but then after a while, I just feel like you're like, okay, this is kind of silly and ridiculous, and I feel like at that point the filmmakers are like saying, okay, this is where you're crying, you should be even more sad now. When I feel like the story itself is just fascinating, as it is. You don't need to do all of that. And I feel like they ruined the movie. They ruined the documentary. They made it into this thing of where it's nothing I would want to watch to like own. I mean, the first half of it, first two chapters of the documentary are fascinating, but the story itself is so well done, so riveting. They didn't need to like do these like heavy-handed cues, visual cues, and it's really cheesy. And Lake Mungo never does that. That's the thing. It is the story is so well done, the acting is so well done. They never rely on these like super dumb, cheesy tropes to like, oh, okay, this is where you're supposed to feel happy, or this is where you're supposed to feel really good. It's there in the story already. You don't need to have extra, bullshit being thrown at you. And I think that to me is such a prime time example of like really well, an example of just high craftsmanship. It's they do such an incredible job with that, and it's edited together so well, and it's just, and again, I've said many times before, I am a sucker for pure atmosphere. The movie can be the biggest piece of trash I've ever seen, but if it has this thing of where it's got this atmosphere and it sucks me in, I will probably really enjoy that movie, even if it's, you know, kind of terrible, poorly acted, poorly directed, poorly edited, and those kinds of things. But if it's got this atmosphere, that's what I'm all about. That's why I gravitate towards films like this, and that's why I gravitate towards, even though this movie is like top shelf on every level. But that's why that's why I love exploitation movies, and that's, low budget trash, and that's why those films are my passion, because of that, as ridiculous as it is. But extraordinary movie. I can't recommend this movie enough. This is a brilliant transfer for a brilliant movie. One of the best movies I have seen, and you just never know. I love that thing of pure discovery when you find something that you've never heard about, and somehow it lands on your lap and you're like, wait, what the hell is this? And then you are kind of riveted by it. You're really, moved by it. And it's fantastic. I think this movie is definitely one of the scariest movies. Again, with horror films, it's hard to say. I watch so many films, and I don't really. Sometimes people feel like, well, you can get jaded, and nothing really kind of motivates you. But I don't have that feeling. Like I still get creeped out. There are many films that still like scare me, and there's a difference. There are horror films out there that give a creepy atmosphere, or just give you this, very, like an amusement park ride. and it's you get that feeling of escapism, and it's going down that spooky road kind of a thing. The monster under the bed. But then you have other films that have those aspects, but then there's something about them that really strikes this chord that really can really get under your skin and give you goosebumps. And and it's this primal thing. And I think there are films obviously that do that. I think The Exorcist is one of them. I think Hereditary, a more recent film. That's a movie that really got under my skin and continues to, I think, have this weight to it that it's generally a scary movie. I think one of the scariest movies of all time is The Audition. Just an amazing film, and I think Sinister with Ethan Hawke. That movie creeped the shit out of me when I first saw it. The Babadook. These are all newer films, and I think Lake Mungo is up there. You know, The Shining still gets under my skin every time I watch it. Alien still gets under my skin. Movies that like are in that extra heavy level category of where it gets under your skin. It like legitimately scares you. So it's a different kind of atmosphere. It's a different kind of experience, and I think Lake Mungo is definitely there. And I think Blair Witch Project has that vibe too. That movie scared the shit out of me when I first saw it. Like generally, like struck this chord where I was like, wow, this is intense. This has that aspect. And again, never heard of this movie. Came out of the blue for me. Totally random. Yeah, I can't say enough things. So anybody out there who is into just really, really well crafted films, and if you're into getting scared, Lake Mungo. Thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.